While many people remember December 7, 1941, as the day of the surprise attack and the daring tactical victory of the Imperial Navy, few people wonder why Japan, a country with an industrial potential 10 times inferior to the United States, decided to take this suicidal step at all. This was not just a tactical decision made in the desperate situation of the oil embargo, but the culmination of deep strategic and cultural misconceptions based on a fatal underestimation of the American spirit, its colossal economy, and most importantly, its productive power and ability to hyperscale in an all-out war. The illusion of Japanese victory was based on 3 key pillars, which were elevated to the rank of axioms in Tokyo: strategic, psychological, and temporary. A key element of Japanese naval planning, known as Kantai Kassen, the decisive battle of the main forces, was a doctrine based on the legacy of the victory over the Russian fleet at Tsushima in 1905. Japanese strategists believed that the war in the Pacific would be resolved in one grand naval battle where they would be able to destroy the enemy fleet with one masterful strike. This doctrine completely ignored the lessons of the First World War, ignoring the long-term nature of conflicts and the role of economic exhaustion. The Japanese believed that it was enough to deliver one devastating blow to the American Pacific Fleet. This strike was supposed to paralyze the United States for a period of 12 to 18 months, which would give Japan time to create a powerful defensive periphery. The main architect of the attack, Admiral Yamamoto, was one of the few who studied at Harvard and served as naval attaché in Washington in the 1926th and 28th years, realistically imagining the power of Detroit and the industrial valleys of America, as well as the unlimited natural resources of the United States. In private conversations, which were documented by his assistants, he warned the management, "If I am assigned to wage war with the United States, I will continuously advance for 6 months, but I have absolutely no confidence that I will be able to succeed if the war lasts 2 or 3 years." His words, which were supposed to be a warning, were tragically reversed and used as a constraint for the entire strategy. They needed to achieve victory before the American industry was operating at full capacity, that is, before their initial qualitative advantage was overwhelmed by the American quantity. The attack on Pearl Harbor was only the prelude to a decisive battle aimed at eliminating American battleships and aircraft carriers at the very start. However, the strategic misconception was that the Japanese leadership overestimated the psychological effect of the strike, believing that America was a giant with feet of clay. They expected that the Americans, faced with a humiliating defeat, would lose the will to fight, especially in light of the complex logistics of Pacific supplies, and agreed to a peaceful settlement, recognizing Japanese dominance in Asia, where Japan would have already managed to seize strategically important territories rich in oil, rubber, and tin, in particular the Dutch East Indies, Malaya, and the Philippines, and create an indestructible defensive periphery. This time window, which Japan was counting on, was directly related to the fact that the engineering race, as shown by the latest developments of the Second World War, required unlimited resources. Japan believed that the qualitative superiority of their aircraft, such as the early Zero, which initially terrorized Allied pilots, would give them a margin of safety. But, as can be seen from the ranking of the fastest propeller-driven fighters, the limit of piston-powered aviation was achieved through advanced design solutions, desperate innovations, and a relentless quest for dominance in the skies, where countries invested unlimited resources to gain even the slightest advantage. This was the fatal mistake. The Japanese did not take into account that American industry was capable not only of mass production, but also of revolutionary modernization under military pressure. While Japanese engineers faced a chronic shortage of strategic materials, their opponents, the United States, Great Britain, and Germany, chased every mile an hour until the very end of the conflict. Recall that the FW-190D9, Dora, and Supermarine Spitfire Mark XIV reached their speeds of 426 and 446 miles per hour, respectively, only thanks to the radical evolution and installation of engines such as Rolls-Royce Griffon 65 with a capacity of more than 2,000 horsepower, which required strengthening the entire body.
Japan proved unable to ensure such a continuous and costly evolution for its entire fleet. Japanese militarism was deeply imbued with the ideas of Bushido, the warrior's code that glorified self-sacrifice, discipline, and spiritual superiority over materialism. Japanese leaders, including Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, believed that American society, saturated with luxury, jazz, Hollywood films, and consumer goods, would be too soft and undisciplined to withstand a protracted and bloody war on the other side of the world. They believed that, unlike the Japanese, who were ready to fight to the last, preferring death to dishonor, the concept of giri, the Americans, faced with serious losses, for example the sinking of battleships, would quickly lose patience and politically force their government to make peace. This belief was also reinforced by racist views. Japanese propaganda portrayed the United States as a mixed, weak, and ethnically heterogeneous society, incapable of lasting cohesion and great sacrifices. This psychological mistake was perhaps the most fatal, as it completely ignored American history, which has repeatedly demonstrated the nation's ability to resist fiercely and for a long time in response to external aggression. The Japanese command relied on the human factor and moral superiority, completely underestimating the phenomenon of the industrial blitzkrieg. They believe that since it takes years to train one qualified Imperial Navy pilot and several years to build one battleship, their launch strike would give them enough time. They could not imagine that the United States would be able to move from peaceful production to military production with unprecedented speed, turning factories like Willow Run into an arsenal of democracy.
The most staggering misconception was the complete disregard for industrial statistics, which could easily be obtained through intelligence channels. Japanese military planners focused on time advantage and morale, but consciously or unconsciously refused to take into account the tenfold gap in production capacity, and in some critical positions even 20 times. For example, the production of steel, a key military resource, in the United States amounted to about 67 million metric tons in 1940. Japan, only about 7 million tons. The United States also had virtually unlimited reserves of oil and coal, while Japan was critically dependent on imports. In 1940, the United States produced about 6,000 combat aircraft. After Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt, using unprecedented powers, set a goal of 50,000 aircraft in 1942. The United States not only achieved this goal, but also surpassed it, producing more than 47,000 aircraft in 1942 and almost 100,000 in 1944. The Japanese aviation industry, at its peak in 1944, was able to produce only 28,000 aircraft, with a significant portion of this production coming from outdated models or aircraft experiencing an acute shortage of high-quality materials. By the end of the war, the United States had launched more than 150 aircraft carriers, including light and escort ones, while Japan had built only 17 large aircraft carriers during this time. American factories such as Willow Run or Henry Kaiser shipyards demonstrated unprecedented speed. They could build one Casablanca-class escort aircraft carrier in just 3 months, and even one Liberty transport ship in less than 15 days. For Japanese strategists, this math was just background information or potential that would never be realized due to the softness of American society. They did not take into account that the speed of American production would allow them not only to saturate the fleet, but also to quickly copy and improve Japanese technology. For example, replacing Zero with Hellcats, depriving Japan of even temporary qualitative superiority. The Japanese situation at the end of the war in many ways resembled Germany's technological desperation. Outstanding designs such as the FW-152H and the revolutionary Dornier D-335, with a speed of 469 miles per hour and 474 miles per hour, respectively, appeared too late and in too few numbers. The D-335, Strela, with its unique push-pull configuration, had no chance to prove itself in combat due to complexity, late arrival, and Germany's collapsing industrial base. The same fate, only on a larger scale, awaited Japan, which could not provide even its most advanced developments, which appeared too late, with fuel, pilots, or infrastructure. Admiral Yamamoto, being one of the most sober-minded strategists, knew that if Japan could not win the war quickly, it would be flooded with American products. His plan to attack Pearl Harbor was tactically brilliant, but strategically unsuccessful, and its implementation turned out to be incomplete. Yamamoto demanded the destruction of aircraft carriers, the true foundation of the modern Navy, as he was the first to realize their crucial role, calling them the fist of the fleet. However, on that fateful day on December 7th, the American aircraft carriers Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga were absent from the base, carrying out aircraft delivery missions. The Japanese focused on destroying 8 battleships, mistakenly believing that the battleship remained the decisive combat unit, which was a conceptual mistake in the era of carrier-based aviation. Moreover, the Japanese pilots, on the orders of Vice Admiral Nagumo Chuichi, did not attack critical facilities, huge fuel depots at the Red Hill base, where 4.5 million barrels of fuel were stored, and repair docks. If they had destroyed the fuel tanks, the U.S. Navy would have had to withdraw to the West Coast for refueling and repairs, which would have truly paralyzed the Pacific Ocean for the promised 12 to 18 months, preventing a quick response. The preservation of these facilities allowed the American Navy to immediately launch a counteroffensive, and 6 months later, to inflict irreparable damage on Japan in the Battle of Midway, where 4 Japanese aircraft carriers were lost, which was a turning point. Thus, Pearl Harbor did not weaken, but on the contrary, awakened the American industry and united the politically divided nation, directing its energy towards one goal: total war. The Japanese bet on the strategic lethargy of the enemy proved to be a failure. Instead of demoralizing the United States, the attack gave the Americans a single powerful moral incentive to create an arsenal of democracy, which eventually decided the outcome of the conflict. The total difference of 61 miles per hour, separating the FW-190D9 from the fastest P-51H Mustang at 487 miles per hour, demonstrates that every improvement in this war was worth countless hours of testing and desperate innovation. Japan lost because it was unable to lead this relentless race to the end. After all, in a prolonged war, it's not just the best pilots or the bravest warriors who win, but the side that is able to print more planes and build more ships with unparalleled speed, while constantly maintaining advanced engineering solutions, as demonstrated by the P-51H reaching the absolute peak of piston aviation. Japan, unfortunately for itself, refused to accept this simple but fatal mathematics of industrial warfare. And Pearl Harbor was not the beginning of its victory, but the starting point of its inevitable defeat.